Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. I've been traveling for the last couple days and had a conversation with a friend about healthcare. And in particular, we were discussing drug companies and the problems that exist right now from a perspective of drug companies not only own the patents, but they pretend to walk through a science process, but they don't actually release the data that is related to get themselves an actual, truly independently verified process. There is no openness of that data. The drug companies, as they are seeking this validation process from universities, they will oftentimes write the results of these studies for those that are doing the study because they have paid for that whole process. Now, this is a trend within technology that I feel is completely unacceptable because it undermines the legitimacy of science. And it is a very big, ugly blot upon the face of the American model of drug research and for medicine overall within the United States. And it appears to get worse and worse over the years, which causes some people to jump over the line and scream, oh, well, we need to get government involved to solve the problem. Government's never solved the problem. Oftentimes, government is the problem. And in this case, there is also the hand of government that seems to have tainted the process that used to exist in the pre-80s world. There was an act that was brought forth to enable universities to profit from their research. It seems simple and obvious that that would be a great opportunity, that their research could be capitalized upon and bring revenues into these universities so that they could expand their programs. As with everything in government, unintended consequences has come to rule. And we are paying that price now. Where the average drug cost 50 years ago was a lot more reasonable. Last year, I think some of the newer drugs, they're trying to say that it's roughly $200,000 for a dose. This is insane. And there is relatively no reason that I can think of, especially when you're utilizing AI as part of your research process. AI doesn't add extensive amounts of cost to your research process. And if it does, you're not using it right. That's particularly clear in this particular instance of drug research. Now, I know that drug research is expensive, and it's not necessarily should be a completely charitable organization. However, what we are discussing is life. And as a result, people get very emotional about it. And this is where the calls for socializing everything comes out. Because people feel like, well, if the government gave us all access, that we would all benefit equally. That's not the way it works, though. If you look at Canada, once you're old enough to retire, you don't actually get high on the list for all of these life-saving procedures. They push you down further and further, which is why those that can afford it go to the United States in order to get those surgeries or those procedures or whatever it might be. And I know that's going to tick a lot of you off that say, oh, Canada is so wonderful. Yes, there are some wonderful benefits of that process. However, you're missing the whole process and the unintended consequences of this socialization that you want to champion. So before I dive in even further and really annoy everybody, I'm going to toss out that there might be another process, one that we utilize in the United States as well, but it's been in existence for hundreds of years. It's the cooperative model. Now, this is a group of people that are actually working together to solve a problem. In the United States, this cooperative model has been utilized within electrical utilities and telephone utilities and water utilities, and across the board any other type of utility. But it's also something that will work within the medical community. There's in the 1890s in Switzerland, and I apologize, I can't come up with a name off the top of my head right now, but it organized in order to meet the healthcare requirements of the people that were participating within that group. And it's still in operation today. This is something that I think has value and merit that we can consider. There are other models of this cooperative model, or not other models, but other cooperative models in play right now within the healthcare community. There's some in Brazil, some in Italy, and France, obviously, but that's not necessarily the way that they're applying it as well as they could. But what the cooperative model enables is that those that participate within the model or are members of that cooperative are able to vote upon the things that matter and the items that they pursue. So these cooperatives are able to negotiate better prices and other things like that. That is true. But there's an aspect of this that I think might be of more value. And that would be where cooperatives are working together to build specific types of drugs for specific issues. And yes, those are expensive potentially, but I believe that the necessity brought on by smaller groups has the ability to bring innovation into this process in a way that Pfizer will never achieve, because Pfizer is only in it for their shareholders. And that's not a negative and hateful thing to say about Pfizer. They're a company that is for profit. That is their purpose. If they were not doing the best for their shareholders, they would be in violation of their own bylaws. That is something to keep in mind. If healthcare and the needs of the people that are involved in it is truly important, and I believe it is, then it requires a different model to be followed than the socialist model or the purely capitalist model. I think that there is a melding of the minds possible within the cooperative model. And it's one that I think holds value not just from a utility perspective, but from a medical perspective as well. Most of the existing medical cooperatives are more like pharmacy groups or small groups of doctors that have banded together. But I think that this is something that we could work on building larger cooperatives within the research communities to undermine the current view that this information is purely for profit and to be patented and held and prevented from reaching the public use phase without exorbitant profits being reaped from that process, because that is necessary for their shareholders. When you have a cooperative model, there's usually a margin set, and that's typically not more than 10%. Oftentimes it's in the 5 to 8% range. So this is something that I think we need to consider as we look at the healthcare challenges that are out there and the issues with drugs and other trends within the medical community and that expense that keeps ratcheting and ballooning up. We've reached a point where it's unsustainable to continue to pay Pfizer their 200, 300, and soon enough it'll be $500,000 per dose for these types of radical new therapies that are amazing in whatever they're able to do. And some of them are not as amazing as they may have led us on to believe. But that's another issue and another topic. But this cooperative model is something that holds value currently in the world in other industries. And I believe that as people consider it, it has the potential to democratize, in a way, the drug research world and the medical world in a way that has benefit. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to do. Cooperatives are never an easy operating sort of thing to do. They require the participation of their members. And that's a difficult thing to identify in some cases. But ultimately, the amount that we pay in healthcare currently makes that a viable model in some way, shape, or form. Now, how that is developed within the current U.S. world, I don't know. I don't claim to know all the answers. It's just a thought, having been associated with cooperatives for quite a long time. I see them as having an opportunity in this particular area to make a difference for the people of the cooperative, which ideally would be all of us. That's food for thought tonight. Have a good night.